Thank you very much. Welcome back. We still have our guest today. Prof, do you want to add to what Mr. Moditso was saying?
Sure. I think, Mr. Kaka, what's important, as Mr. Moditso has said, in terms of the rights, and it's not my domain to speak, but to contribute to the continuity of the discussion, when you say rights are limited, that is a fact. But there's also the portion that the public need to be aware of, is when rights are limited, the prevalence of public good takes precedence. So that the collective value in the country takes precedence over the individual. And in a microcosm, and the only reason I know this in detail is I had to write a piece on this last week, is in the work environment, can an employer impose this on you? As much as there is a lot of debate around whether it can be mandatory or not, the reality is if the employer says, I want to keep everyone here protected to the best that we can given what we have, and one employee says, I'm sorry, I don't want to take the vaccine, we're not saying that the people in the work environment won't get it anywhere else if they came with public transport or they went to spa or any retail store. But you want to reduce the risk for that person also getting COVID from an employee who's been vaccinated but exposed, and actually help them stay alive also. So the collective positivity, in my mind, at this stage, outweighs the right of an individual saying no completely in a work environment, because you can choose to work there or not. And if, for example, like doctors, when you work in a hospital or a government environment and you work overtime and there's an emergency that comes in, you can't say, sorry, my contract, I need to leave at 8. You have an ethical duty. So too in a work environment. That decision of whether you want to stay in that environment or not is yours. The employer is not saying stay. If you don't like the rules that they've put in, and you can't rely on the old contract, because when you sign the contract, there's no COVID most likely. Now that things have changed today, you need to say, I'm going to take the new rules or leave. That's as simply as I see it. The second point, Mr. Kaka, that I think is very important, and we've had that in South Africa, and I call it almost grandstanding, upending the country, because reputationally destroyed us for a long time, and we still have a negative perception. Even right now, the UK is still adjusting South Africa's acceptance, because South Africa is seen as the epicenter of these new variants, which is not true, firstly. But when somebody says something publicly in a paper that's not been reviewed, but is in a preprint version, or they go on TV and speak, and the fact that, and I say it with great respect to a title of saying, if somebody says, I'm Professor X, and I work in a healthcare facility, and I am at a university or not, do not take it on fact. Because a lot of the confusion created in the last 6 months with massive reputational damage to the country, although it was scientific, the person who made those findings public was not a clinician. They were not a doctor. They were a researcher with a professorship in a medical school. But they were not trained as doctors to understand that this variant in isolation is not the decision. It needs to be seen in the clinical context of everything else that affects the patient, including HIV, TB, malnutrition, unemployment. You've got to understand the public health environment. You shouldn't focus on the world must clap because I found it first. Because when you found it first, they first clapped for you and then hated the country. And the economic impact of that is far more than your reputation of saying, I did it. So please, to the viewers and consumers who are either listening or watching this, even if I say something, check if I'm a doctor. I can tell you I am. But do not take something on face value because somebody says, I'm Professor X, I'm attached to this institution. We're finding that now in the local elections. People are saying we're putting person X because they're from this field or that field. Have you checked if they still can practice in their field? Have they not been suspended or struck off? Because the reality is when people leave their primary domain, you've got to ask why. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But you need to first question not just who said it, what is their context, what is their personal benefit, why did they do it like this, and then are they credible within their peers and their environment.
Thank you very much, Prof. We'll come back again because this is very important that we must understand the reason why we should vaccinate. Thank you, sir.